take some time out of your busy day to sit, relax, and learn from Isabella Ciardelli. Her story will take you worldwide and is full of hard work, creativity, and success. And in times like today, we can all use a feel-good story with valuable lessons, no matter who you are. Isabella is fresh in her new role as an associate copywriter at BBH in New York City, although she is working remotely in Miami, so still pretty awesome. BBH is a world-class agency that has recently undergone leadership changes in New York, and they've been running Levi's and other great clients' creative work for decades, you know. However, as we recorded this interview, she was a mere 2 weeks into her position, so we hit the episode hard talking about her time as a copywriter resident at TBWA Media Arts Lab. You know, Ad Age's creative agency of the year. Their exclusive client is Apple, and she's also friends with Jada Hill, who was the strategy resident that was on this podcast earlier. What a small world. So, give this episode a listen to learn how to break in some of the best creative agencies globally, to learn how to overcome imposter syndrome, and hear some honest advice from someone who has built her brand so well to find success even in this crazy pandemic. To learn more about Isabella, see her recommended resources at Instagram at Entering Ad. Once again, at Entering Ad. Give us a follow and throw us 5 stars too if you found anything useful on Apple Podcasts. So, without further ado, this is the Breaking and Entering Podcast, and I am your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. Isabella Ciardelli, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Podcast. On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give that pronunciation of your last name?
I would give it an 8. I would give it a solid 8.
And what would a 10 sound like?
Well, if you say it like how it's supposed to be said, kind of with in Italian, it's Ciardelli, but Ciardelli is kind of what people here in the US say, which is, you said it really well, so.
I said the US version,
yeah,
8 out of 10. So there's definitely work to be done as a podcaster. That's something I need to prepare more, but nobody's perfect. Near perfect, though, it seems like your resume and your portfolio is pretty high up there. I mean, you are currently, an associate copywriter at BBH in New York?
Yes.
Wow. And for those who don't know, that's isn't like the BBH mascot the black sheep?
Yes, it's the black sheep, yeah.
And it's kind of more of a famous, it originated in London, I believe. That's like where the main headquarters are at.
Yes.
And there's probably co-headquarters, whatever you want to call it. The US headquarters are in New York. Predominantly, they're known for their long creative relationship with the brand. Can anybody guess it? Levi's.
Yeah. That was like the original kind of ad that put BBH on the map with Levi's. Is very historic and amazing. And the founders are British, Bartle, Hergerty, and Bogle, so they're the BBH.
Right. So that's the initials. I mean, I would like to think our listeners at this point, if they're consistent fans of the show, we don't have a lot, so power to the people listening, they're probably pretty well educated, or they care about the industry. They probably read up on Ad Age, Ad Week, or they're in the advertising Twitter world, I would hope, at this point.
Yeah.
Super excited to talk to you because not only, I mean, right now you're at BBH, and how long have you been there?
I've been there for 2 weeks, so it's very
recent. Shit. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow. So, So you're kind of in the midst of the onboarding process, or are you pretty much settled in now?
Yeah, so I would say I'm pretty much settled in, but it's weird because I was there for 2 weeks, and then now we're kind of on holiday break. So, nice. But yeah, it's been great so far. Everybody has been amazing, and it's been a very seamless kind of onboarding process, which I really appreciate. So.
Yeah. And that's important. That we'll have to, that will be one of the foundations of this episode, then what it's like to onboard digitally. Hopefully people listening out there are getting jobs or they're heading into internships eventually. I'm sure you've got good advice on that digital onboarding, getting to know people. I mean, as well, on top of the BBH thing that you're doing now, the associate copywriter, you've just finished up a residency at TBWA Media Arts Lab, and that was also remote. Am I correct?
Yes, that was that ran from August to end of November. All remote. Yeah.
And Jada Hill, and you're friends with Jada?
Yeah, she was one of the residents too. We're good friends. Yeah, Jada was a strategy resident while I was there.
And were you a copywriter resident? Was that the role?
Yes. Yeah.
That is so cool. Mm-hmm. That is so cool. So we're going to have to talk about how you got those. I mean, those TBWA Media Arts Lab and BBH, those are some powerhouse agencies that I know a lot of people aspire to work for.
Yeah. I think I've been so lucky to find my way into these agencies, and that's something that I'm excited to talk to you about too, because I know that I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that, you know, especially in the creative side, that might have not gone to a traditional portfolio school.
Sure.
And I'm here to tell you that it's still possible, because I didn't either.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's been amazing. I'm so incredibly grateful that in this crazy year I was able to, you know, find my way into these opportunities, and it's been amazing so far.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So where do we start? I think, do we want to kick it to kind of like the foundations of your creativity, maybe how you traveled to the US when you were 10 years old, from Ecuador? Where do we want to start? I'll let you navigate this conversation.
Yeah, sure. We can start there. So I moved to the US when I was 10. I'm originally from a tiny coastal town in Ecuador called Bahia. And it's literally like the smallest place ever. Everybody kind of knows each other or is like related to each other. Mm-hmm. And I came to the US, to Miami, Florida when I was around 10. And that's kind of where I grew up and where I still am. And yeah, you know, I think talking about creativity, I never really thought of myself as like the creative type of kid. You know, I was never like drawing or that type of stuff. I was never really that type of kid, but I was kind of outgoing in a way. And I think, but somebody once told me, you know, everybody in their own way is kind of creative. And I think that is so true, because I had to find a way to kind of communicate in a language that I didn't speak when I moved here. And, you know, at 10, you're pretty developed, and you know, you're older. So I think that in a way was creative, right? Like finding ways to communicate with people in a language that I didn't speak. But yeah, I think when it comes to creativity, I never thought of myself as the most creative type, and I would never in a million years have dreamed of being where I am today or in this industry. So I think that just goes to show that, you know, we all kind of have some sort of creativity in us, I think.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Like myself, I never really found myself, really branding myself as creative. I mean, I tend to be the account track, and I still am, but I mean, I think if you're going into advertising or this industry, there's creativity somewhere in your backbone. But what was, you said you had to find creative ways to, kind of learn the language. Was that through writing? What creative ways helped you?
Yeah, I think definitely through writing. And I just think, you know, in more kind of impersonal ways, like the way you kind of are through your personality, the way you meet people, the way you talk to people. I was lucky that I came to a place like Miami where it's pretty bilingual, and most people speak Spanish. So, you know, it wasn't like if I had moved to another state where, you know, there's not a lot of people that speak Spanish, but I definitely think that just learning how to communicate with people in other ways that might not have been through, you know, speaking is definitely key, I would say, because it kind of forms you to grow your personality, and you're kind of forced to be more outgoing because you have to like make friends somehow. So that definitely kind of broke me out of my shell and gave me some sort of confidence in my personality, and just, made me kind of be more outgoing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in your bio on your portfolio, which we'll link to, it says in Ecuador, the town that you're from, a lot of the time there's a lot of shrimp farmers, and then what's crazy about that is you're very allergic to shrimp.
Yes. Yes,
Accurate?
it's funny because my brother and I are both, well, he's more allergic than I am. I'm allergic, but he's really, really allergic. And where the town where we're from, Bahia, that's kind of like the main source of the economy. It's shrimp farms. And pretty
Okay.
much all like the main families that live there some way or another own a plot of land, and that's like the business over there. So
Interesting. I feel
yeah.
very sorry for you because shrimp is awesome, I think.
I know. I've had it a few times, and
Yeah.
I do it to myself, but
Yeah. As
it's
long as
very
you're
good.
not too bad. Cool. So
Yeah.
I mean, what a great place to land as well. Like you said, the culture of Miami, it's bilingual, and it's also warm and beautiful there. Palm trees. It's a
Yeah.
place to be. And you're still there now. You're working remote, correct?
Yes, I am still here, and yeah, it's an amazing place. There's so much diversity, and it's so rich in culture. And I think for us coming from, or for pretty much any family that comes from Latin America, I think it's the perfect place to come to, because you're kind of in the middle at a crossroads between the U.S. and your home country, and you still feel at home here. So
Nice.
it definitely helped with
What
moving.
what languages do you speak?
I speak English and Spanish,
Gotcha.
a little bit of French, but I'm not going to even say that because it's
Okay.
very basic.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Just wondering.
Yeah.
So Miami, I mean, I'm sure did you apply to some of the great agencies in Miami? I know David has a good shop there. That's
Yeah.
the only one I can really think of at the top of my head. But were you looking at Miami agencies?
So when I graduated, this is funny because when I graduated last year, a lot of people think I graduated 2020, but I graduated 2019.
19.
Yeah, because I really kicked off my career this year. But I graduated last May
Okay.
2019, and when I was graduating, I don't think I had the confidence to apply to an agency like David, or I didn't think my book was in a good place to apply there. I did apply to a few places here and there, but one thing that I made sure that I did not want for my career moving forward was to block myself in this kind of U.S. Hispanic market. And I think a lot of agencies here in Miami focus on that, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But I knew that I kind of wanted to go more for like the general market agencies, and
Gotcha.
yeah.
So New York would be a great. So I can see how New York is a good option, especially now that you're working remote. You get best of both worlds. I'm sure you're getting those clients that you're looking for. I mean, Chicago would have been good too. LA also. I mean, and a lot of great cities. I think like Austin has really good agencies too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So BBH New York is the real deal.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be there. I think I feel like I got in at a really great time, because a lot of things have shifted within the agency this year. A lot of new leadership coming on, a new CCO, a new president, and there's just such a great energy and atmosphere within the agency, and the culture it's really great. So
it's good vibes.
Yeah, great vibes.
Okay, so college, where'd you go? I know we got FSU. Why'd you choose FSU? What was going on there?
So I went to FSU for my first couple of years of college. I chose FSU because it's in Tallahassee, in the capital of Florida, and they have a really great political science program.
How far is that from Miami?
It's like 6 hours and a half driving.
Oh, that's a trek still.
Yeah, it's a drive. And I chose that because I had all the intentions of going to law school and being pre-law. So I went in as a political science major, did the whole thing for 2 years, economics, international affairs, political science. And that's pretty much why I chose FSU right off the bat. But I do think in retrospect, that's something that I always think about. Like, I don't think I explored as much as I should have different majors that there are nowadays, because there are so many things that you could study.
Yeah.
And I just kind of focused so much on being a lawyer and going to law school that I didn't really give opportunity to exploring other majors and other sectors. So that's definitely something that when I look back, I'm like, I wish I would have done more so, because in high school you don't really think about all the things that you could do, but
Right.
you know,
They don't do a very good job with major exploration.
no.
No, yeah. So you went to FSU. This story reminds me a lot of Bree Fern. Do you know Bree Fern? She's
Yeah.
the breaking ad
Um,
copywriter.
yeah.
Very similar. Very similar. Because she also wanted to be in the episode she talked about. She was also I think she's from, or she went to Miami ad school. I don't know if she is from Miami. And
Yeah, I think I connected with her on LinkedIn briefly. We've talked for a few times, and
yeah,
she also
super
went
cool.
to the University of Miami.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's super cool. So
Yeah.
you so pre-law at FSU, what switched? What was that what was the tipping point where you're like, I gotta get out of here. I gotta do advertising?
Yeah. So I think one day I was just, one thing is what you think something is from the outside, but then being in it and studying it and putting into practice is completely different. I like political science as more like in the theory side of
Sure.
it, but
Yeah.
I never saw when I would think about what that would look like as a career put into practice.
Yeah, the application.
I did not like where that was going. So I knew it was, time for something different. And I just thought I was capable of so much more, and more in a more creative atmosphere. And I've always loved to write. So I just somehow, I don't even remember when, but I think I took like an elective or something
Sure.
in advertising, and I found this whole world that I didn't even know existed.
Yep.
And I kind of took a chance and went that direction. And then I transferred to the University of Miami.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So when you were at FSU, you figured out the new world and you said, okay, advertising is gonna be my shit. Why didn't you stay at FSU? Why did you go back to Miami?
So I think a couple of reasons. Number one, my University of Miami has a really great advertising
Yes.
program, and I think it's pretty underrated in the more traditional college programs. And that's something that really drew me to University of Miami. Number two, I kind of wanted to go back home.
Yep.
Tallahassee is a very small town, and I was just used to Miami, and I think back then I would say it's safe to say that it wasn't as diverse as it could have been as a school, as a
In
town.
Tallahassee?
Yeah. So I just kind of found it to be a little bit of a culture shock for me, and
Sure.
just kind of missing out on that diversity and just culture that you have here in Miami. So I decided to come back.
Was that a tough transition? Was the family okay with it? Was it easy to do, like credit wise? Was the transfer process
You mean
smooth?
coming back to Miami?
Yeah, when you transferred.
Yeah. I would say that I think the transferring of credits was easier than I expected it to be,
Good.
especially switching majors, like completely
Yeah.
to something different. If you think
Yes.
about it, I really did the advertising major in 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's pretty crazy. I mean, it took some obviously, hard work. I had to kind of play catch up a little bit because all of my classmates were building their portfolio since freshman
Sure.
year,
Sure.
so definitely took a little bit of catch up and bundling up a little bit on classes, maybe not
Sure.
taking 4 but taking 5 a semester.
Yep.
Things like that, but it was definitely doable. And I always joke around with my friends that I'm a very like type A person when it comes to my college career, and all my courses and everything that I had to take and all my requirements. I was pretty much like my own little personal advisor, and I made sure that I was kind of meeting everything that I had to meet. And but it was easier than I ever expected.
So 2017, that's when you got to Miami to start their advertising studies.
Yeah.
And so so all in all, did it take you 4 years to graduate?
Yes, it took me 4
Wow.
years. Yeah.
So now I'm really impressed because, like you said, I'm sure a lot of those law credits, those pre-law credits probably transferred over. I don't know. See, even for me, like transferring within the same college was not the easiest thing. So I'm
Yeah.
super impressed that you were able to do that, switch majors and actual physical universities. That says a lot. But even more impressive is that you were able to get all the advertising done within, basically 2 years, like the courses,
Yeah.
which is not like, that's not even the impressive part. Like, you were able to do that in 2 years, but you were also able to get those extracurriculars, or you were
Yeah.
able to brand yourself, and you were able to put that even more extra work on top of it to be a good advertising student, a great advertising student, to
Yeah.
eventually get all these opportunities. Cause you can go through the motions. Like,
Oh, yeah.
anybody can take advertising, not the hardest major in the world.
No,
From
absolutely.
my school, like, you
No.
could party every day and be
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
advertising major.
Yeah.
But if you
You can cruise through it, and if that's what you're there for, but it definitely
still
takes a
hard though.
yeah.
It still takes time and work. You have to, pass.
Definitely, definitely. It's a very project-based major too, if
Mhm.
especially if you're in the creative side, but I think for everybody,
Yeah.
it definitely took a lot of my part. It was definitely like you being on top of your things, and if you had when I transferred, when I would meet with my advisor, I would make sure I knew what I was talking about, and
Mhm.
maybe there was a course that I had taken at FSU that could meet this requirement.
Yeah.
They found ways to meet that requirement. Like sometimes it's not even if it's not listed on like a website, that doesn't mean that a course can't count for something else. Like
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of ways that you
Pull some
yourself
strings.
can, yeah, pull some strings.
That's kind of like the law part of, though. Like, probably that you understanding the public policy and systems and procedures from probably that law background, you were able to really dive into the system
Yeah,
in
definitely.
Miami and pull some
Yeah,
strings.
and I just wanted it so bad. I think
Sure.
if you want it that bad, you'll find ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nice. So you graduated on time. I mean, what like, were you involved in like AAF, AMA um
Yeah.
at
So,
Miami?
so I was, besides the courses that I was taking, which were like a lot of, it was very time consuming and
Sure.
project based. I was involved in NSAC for a few months. I did not complete it, and that's something that when I look back on, I wish I would have been more involved than I was, because
Mhm.
for me, since I lived at home, I wasn't on campus, it was very easy for me just to kind of go to class, get my things done, meet with everybody that I had to meet, and come back home.
Mm.
Um,
Gotcha.
but when I look back at my college years at specifically, there are so many resources within the communication school at for advertising majors that I wish I would have kind of taken more advantage of. There's the NSAC, the AAF
Sure.
competition. There's a student-run consultancy
Mhm.
called Orange Umbrella that I wish I would have been a part of, but I wasn't. There were a lot of things, and I think that also comes down to something that a lot of people might not talk about, but that feeling of like imposter syndrome. And for me, it was very there and very present because I was coming from a different major and I didn't really know much, and I was kind of insecure in my abilities and my talent and my skills. And I think that kind of held me back from a lot of missed opportunities. But yeah, that's something that maybe I didn't take advantage of. But if somebody listening goes to and they're unsure of what to do, I would tell you to kind of explore all the resources that your university has, because a lot of universities have those type of resources.
Well, I think, well, don't sell yourself short now, because obviously maybe you weren't as involved as you would like to be, but this is a good lesson as well, right? Because a lot of times people preach, oh, get involved freshman year, stay in it, do well, build up
Mhm.
your resume. You're kind of like this evidence that it's okay to explore. It's okay to like explore around, or it's okay to not know exactly right away. It's a really good message to send to these students that, you know, you can still make it if you're not like,
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I
like,
think um, a big part is just finding yourself. That was something that I found that, at my time at I was just finding myself and who I was and what I wanted to do. At the beginning, I was unsure of if I was even good enough to be a creative. So I kind of started like flirting with the idea of going into account. And I also
mm,
kind of my involvement, I think a lot of it was that I actually was working part time my senior year and half of my junior year at an agency, at a local agency in Miami. So, that
Wow.
was kind of taking up a lot of my time too. And I was interning there as an account intern,
What's
actually.
it called? What's the place called?
Markham and Stein.
And when did you start working there?
I started halfway through my junior year and all through my senior year.
Full time or part time?
No, part-time.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be crazy.
Yeah.
And you were doing what there?
I was an account management intern for the Porsche Latin America account. And it was one of those things that I just, I knew that from like day one, I knew that account management wasn't what I wanted to do, but I stuck through it because it was just kind of teaching me the way an ad agency works. It was teaching me the internal processes, just how people work with each other, how different departments interact with each other. And I think it was such a valuable experience. Even though it wasn't creative, I think it taught me so much.
That's it's huge. I mean, obviously you learned that you didn't want to pursue that, which is just as important as knowing you. And then you also understood the process, because that's what account managers do. You have your hands everywhere within the creative process.
Yeah.
So moving forward, I mean, this is good stuff. And you graduated in 2019. What did you do when you graduated?
When I graduated, so obviously I was applying like crazy to, junior positions, internships, and I was getting a lot of no's. And I think that's something that people skip over when they're in great agencies and, they're far along with their career. A lot of people don't talk about those early no's that a lot of people get. And yeah, so I graduated in May 2019, and I was applying to a lot of agencies here in Miami, mostly, and internships for that summer. And I wasn't really finding any opportunities. I think my portfolio just wasn't where it needed to be, honestly. And yeah, I was just kind of trekking along. I worked on my portfolio on my own with friends. I took random freelance gigs wherever I could, just to kind of flex my writing chops, but also just to keep doing something as I figured out what was next. I thought about the idea of going to portfolio school, actually, all the way through earlier this year. And I even applied to the brand center at VCU and was accepted. But yeah, and then earlier this year, I found I was accepted into the MAL residency program. And
fantastic.
Yeah, it was literally like weeks away from getting into VCU. It was
That's
either
a huge thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's a huge thing, because a lot of my friends went through this internal crisis, if you will, because they weren't finding jobs. My creative friends weren't able to find jobs, so they were stuck between sticking out the job search or just going to portfolio school.
Yeah.
So how close were you? Said you had a matter of weeks before you were going to admit into VCU?
Yep. Yeah, I got my acceptance letter like around January or early February, and then later on that month, I applied to the MAL residency, and I was kind of getting rounds of interviews called back, and that's when I kind of knew I'm going to put off VCU to see where this leads me, and thank God it led me to where it did.
Yeah, this is huge. This is a big part of the interview, I think. When did you and you don't have to answer if you're breaching anything. When did you first start applying to MAL?
To Media Arts Lab, I started applying. I applied. I would say February. I want to say February or April.
Did they market it out as like a winter intern, or like what they market it as, just like a 6-week internship?
It was a 3-month residency. It's actually the first time they ever do an internship program.
That's so cool.
Yeah, because of the whole, all the security issues with Apple, they've never really kind of let interns in the building. But this year, it was their first ever residency program. And actually, the way I found the application is a crazy story.
Tell it.
So I don't know if you or any of the listeners are on the app Fishbowl. But I in the middle of my crisis of whether I wanted to go to ad school or what I was going to do, I posted on Fishbowl just to kind of get some advice from people that might have gone through similar things. And
in the advertising one, what community?
In the advertising one, I think.
Just like the big one?
Yeah, I think the big one. And And I got a DM on Fishbowl from, a creative director, because it's anonymous, so just a creative director, and they replied saying that my story was crazy similar to theirs and to his, and that, he was also from South Florida. He also, didn't know whether to go to portfolio school or not, and he just kind of had a really crazy similar story to mine. And he gave me his email. He was like, I'm a creative director on iPhone at Media Arts Lab.
Whoa.
And if you need further advice, here's my email. So you can just email me. And, me being my networking self, on the email, I saw his name, obviously. Mm-hmm. So I looked him up on LinkedIn and connected with him. And then later that month, he posted the application. And I saw it on my feed.
Wow. You went from Fishbowl to LinkedIn connection to application at Media Arts Lab.
Yeah. It popped up on my feed because we were connected. And I think a lot of employees at Mal were just kind of posting the residency application. And I saw it. I don't think I would have seen that application if it wasn't for that.
Yeah, because I mean, it's not like you're scrolling through LinkedIn as much as like Instagram or whatever, Twitter.
Yeah. Or I'm not going on their website to like check for residency applications,
Right. So wow. So I think I just need to clarify real quick. Fishbowl, for those who don't know, it's like a social media message board for all these different communities in professional world. Advertising has its own community, kind of like a Reddit, I guess. I don't really know Reddit too much. Mm-hmm. But it's all anonymous, and all you can really see is when somebody posts is like where they work at and their role. So you might see like a Media Arts Lab CD.
Yeah, exactly. It gets a little depressing sometimes, but it's helpful.
Yeah, it's crazy. like it is a little depressing. I don't really like, to be honest, I don't really like going on it.
No, me neither. But there's some, sometimes you find some good bits of advice.
Absolutely. Yeah. I found my job through like a university. I don't know if you guys have a Handshake.
Yeah,
we use the platform, and it's like it's like all these logistics, like gross companies,
very corporate.
Yeah, and then I found Edelman on there, and it happened to work out. Like, and I never checked it. I just went on it one day. So it's like, so I guess the message there is check out those different platforms every now and then.
Definitely,
you never know what can happen there.
Yeah, and that's a huge lesson that I learned and that I've applied. Just search, like, if you have names of people, because I got his name. His name is Jed Cohen, by the way. Shout out, Jed. I got his name from the email, and I looked him up on LinkedIn, and that's something that I started doing with people from podcast episodes that I listen to, because I'm a big podcast person.
Nice. What do you listen to?
So I obviously Breaking and Entering. But a lot of throughout my time at UM, I listened to this podcast called Don't Get Me Started.
Yeah. Is that Creative Circus?
It's by the Creative Circus, like, department head. His name is Dan Balser. And so I would listen to episodes, and if I found people that were kind of related to what I wanted to do, I would look them up on LinkedIn and connect with them. Yep. And that's how you build your network,
I've done that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you listened to Ad Lib by Ad Age? Yeah,
I have.
The older episodes, I stopped listening when Brian Breaker got off it. Brian was on this show too.
Cool.
So he's interviewed like David Droga. He's interviewed all these CEOs, and I thought that was like the biggest part of like this podcast. It was I was able to get him on too. These people are not robots; they're humans, and they worst that can happen is they don't respond.
Literally, and that's something that I've done a lot, especially earlier this year. Cold messaging people and just building my network on LinkedIn. People are flattered that you're messaging them and asking for advice or feedback on your portfolio. So do it, because the worst thing is that they don't answer, and whatever you want to the next.
A lot of people don't answer me. I don't know if I'm doing it wrong but I don't care. Like, I don't get hurt about it. I did in the beginning. You would take a long time to like craft things. Now I don't really care. I just go, do you want to come on my podcast?
Yeah, no, I think if that's awesome that you reach out to people like that, because I mean, I do that too, and I've gotten, ghosted a million times, but a lot of times it's just about just saying, hi, how are you? I would love to just jump on a call with you and get advice. Like, not making sure that you're not asking for too much right off the bat, because people are busy and whatnot. But I think just kind of establishing that connection at first and just saying, hi, how are you? This is me. And, would you like to have a conversation? I think people would be more than willing to do so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So I gotta ask, like, so what was the experience like at Media Arts Lab? Was it, obviously it was remote, which I think people they've figured it out by now. The remote learning and the remote work atmosphere. So what would you, tell us what it was like working there. What was the experience overall?
Yeah. It was the most incredible experience I've had so far in my career, in my short career.
Yep.
It's from the beginning, obviously working on a brand like Apple, it's just a dream for anybody in this industry. And, to see how the inner workings of that agency are, and, how just being on WebEx calls with people that you had listened and read about on Adweek, and just seeing the work and the type of conversations that they have, it's just incredible. I think they're at a level of creativity that is inspiring as a junior, and it's just mesmerizing at times that, the level of talent that these people have, it's incredible. And, with that also comes something that I wasn't expecting, but it was just kind of a warm environment. And I think it varies. Like if you ask different people at Mal, I'm sure a lot of them would say otherwise. But for me as a resident, I had the most incredible time just meeting people, and they were so welcoming, but it also took a lot of my part, reaching out to people in the agency, right, scheduling one-on-ones and stuff like that. But I just made sure to make the most of those 3 months and meet as many people as I could and get mentorship from different people. And yeah, it was incredible. I learned so much, and I think it was like my 3-month crash course portfolio school, pretty much.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming you probably got paid instead of paying for portfolio school, so that's nice. That's so cool. And you were there for 3 months. How many residents were there in total ish?
There were 8 residents. So
that's it?
8 residents. Yeah. It was one. So I was the copywriter, and then there was an art director resident. We were partners. And then there were 2 account management, 2 strategy, and 1 production.
I guarantee you easily over 1,000 people applied for that. Easily over 1,000 people.
Yeah, I know it's insane. I was so humbled that I was selected, and every time that they kept on calling me for next rounds and next rounds, I was like, are you sure?
how I'm sure if I were to guess, you probably won't tell me. Maybe Jada mentioned this. I think is there probably like over 5 interviews? And there's got to be over 5 interviews.
Yes, but they were spaced out. So I actually had one with the HR recruiter, and then I had 4 half-hour interviews with people from like the creative department. And there was I think there was one that was kind of like an all agency type of thing. But that was with like the final 12, and then it was like final 8. It was a very weird process. It was like, it was like finalists. Like
you didn't have a group interview, did you?
No, we didn't have a group interview, but we had like a group talk where one of the CDs and like the group account director, they like talked to us as a group, but we never really like
participated. You didn't. Yeah, that'd be weird.
Yeah, that would be super weird to be like with the person that you're kind of competing with.
I wouldn't like that. No, I would. I had an interview like that, I think like my sophomore year for like a on-campus like silly job. I was like making calls and stuff, and it was a group interview, and I was like, this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, that would be awkward. No, it wasn't like that. It was more of like a little like web talk.
Sure.
Kind of like meet the people.
Wow. Okay. So then you're a copywriter there. Talk about like intimidation. I would be a shell of a human. I feel like that first like month where I'm just like trying not to step on anybody's toes. How did you battle that? Did you have a lot of that like?
So much. And I think that imposter syndrome that we were talking about, that just really kicked in because, I was at a place where every single person that I talked to was just crazy talented, and it's an incredible brand, and just the history of work that
Right.
they've been doing, like everything is better than the thing before, and it's like, how do you keep that up?
Yeah.
That's really impressive, and obviously it's intimidating at first, but I think it just comes to realizing that you were chosen for a reason, and
Right.
just believing in that. Because if you think about it, like if you're doubting you being there, you're really doubting like the HR person that chose you,
Right. Right.
so I'm like, she's incredible, and she chose me for a reason, so I'm just gonna believe that, and I'm gonna take that in and be grateful about it, but also, believe it, because if you don't believe it, then you're not gonna do as great as you could. So I really took it upon myself to build that confidence that I needed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, were you there during the campaign privacy that's iPhone, the big
Yes.
security?
I was there when it launched, but
Okay.
they had been working on it
Oh
for
yeah.
a while,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
before.
What a great campaign. The atmosphere there must have been electric knowing that it was so successful. It still is.
Amazing. It's amazing. And just seeing things online, and things that we all, us residents, worked on that
Mhm.
are now in the world, just seeing it, come to life after just, being on a computer, and rounds of reviews and things like that. And it's just crazy.
Wait, so you were saying obviously there's a lot of privacy um and NDAs and secret stuff going on, classified information with Apple. How do you put that on a portfolio then and send it?
Yeah.
Can you do that or no?
No.
So how do you display some of the amazing work you've done to other?
That's something that I'm still not sure 100%, but I think a lot of times what people do, and a lot of times what people do is when they're applying to a role, maybe they get permission from that agency to just send it to that one person, or
Yeah.
reviewing their portfolio, but you can't put stuff on your book. No. That was a whole thing with like us, being on top of our privacy, and making sure that we were following every rule, because there's a lot of them.
Well, think about how much you've grown probably since you started that residency and now that you're landed your full-time job at BBH, probably worlds apart. That's
Worlds
amazing.
apart. It's just thinking about like where I was before I entered Mal, and I think the main thing that changed in me was my confidence level in myself,
Yes.
just believing that, not selling myself short, seeing what I've done and saying, "Hey, that's pretty cool," Just
Absolutely.
just those little kind of mini pep talks to yourself go a long way, because um coming from a different background, and always feeling like I was one step behind everybody else, I never in a million years dreamed of being in agencies that like these, and it takes a lot of confidence building, and I think that's like what I'm most grateful for, just from that experience at Mal, building that confidence, and really believing that I have some sort of talent that has gotten me this far. So yeah, it's worlds apart where my mind was before, and where I am now.
Yeah, and now it's serving such as a great foundation for the rest of your career. Um, so real quick, when you were at Media Arts Lab, I'm assuming you were assigned, and once again, you don't have to tell me if you can't. I'm assuming you're assigned to a specific product launch or campaign within the Apple structure, and then you're on that team. Did they have you work within the same team? Did they have you do a group project with other residents? What
Yeah.
was that? Was that kind of like you were kind of bouncing back and forth between different
It
roles?
was it was exactly that. We
Yeah.
had like a couple things going on at once. We had the residence project that we were working on
Yeah.
simultaneously, as what each of us were put on in our respective departments with
Sure.
like our managers. So
You
yeah.
had like mentors to come
Yeah.
in and help out. Yeah, I got the internship structure down at this point. I
Yes,
can,
yes.
but it's nuanced because I'm sure the workshops that you guys had were just incredible, and the speakers that you've had,
Yeah,
just
no, I
all the
would
learning.
honestly, I really give it to the people at Mal, for putting that program together like they did. I think it was the perfect balance of practical and educational, and it was really well thought out. And I think this program had been like, year in the making or something like that. And
Sure.
So we had workshops, we learned about different departments within the agency, and but then we were also kind of putting into practice and working with our managers and mentors. So it was kind of the best of both worlds, learning wise and putting it into practice.
Well, that's what's kind of tough about the internship. Not tough, it's a challenge for the people that are going to be interning for the first time, either this winter or this summer. If you're at, I think they understand it now. Obviously, this past summer was real weird with the virtual academies they were doing. I think they'll probably figure out a way to have you on a team, have you do a intern project, have those workshops, we'll call them, all figured out, hopefully by this summer. Maybe hopefully in person by the summer. But it is kind of challenging to balance all those, like to balance those different activities within the internship in such short time, where you also have to, go above and beyond within your original work. And you also want to network and hopefully continue your job there. I'm sure that was probably a big part of your mental pursuit was, I need to figure out how to stay at Media Arts Lab, right? Because you got in, now you want to stay in. So that was probably huge, trying to network. And did any of the residents end up going back? I don't think Jada has.
So going to your point, I think that was definitely a balancing act, keeping up with everything that you had to do, both on, your own projects that you were with your team, with the team project, and networking. I think that was a huge thing. I when I first started at Mal, I made it a point to contact people that were within the creative department, in the strategy department, in the account department, and just have like one-on-one calls with those people, keep up with them. Also, I think that's a huge part. Like, don't just reach out to people for the sake of reaching out and just a one-time thing. Like, keep up with those people. I had like bi-weekly calls with certain people.
Nice.
And just talking about like random things that what was going on that week, just a casual conversation that goes a long way. And definitely, that mindset of I want to stay here, and it's such an amazing place. Obviously, I'm here. I want to make the best of it. It was funny because nearing the end of the residency program, all the residents were like wondering, what was going to happen? Like, are we going to stay? Are we going to be told that like that's it? And since we weren't really getting a lot of direction on what was going to happen next, the last 2 weeks of the residency, I started applying, and I applied to the position at BBH. And reaching like the last week of the residency, they sort of told us that for now, given the situation and everything, they weren't ready to kind of keep up time, but they were able to kind of extend our contracts as freelancers.
Oh, nice.
For a couple of months. So that was a thing that I kind of had to think about, because I was offered the position at BBH on my last week at my residency. And then I also had this kind of freelance couple of month gig, but I went with the full time, and I got a lot of mentor. And that's when those relationships that you build come in handy, because I was able to talk to people from Mal about this job offer that I had from BBH, and they kind of guided me. And those mentors that I had, Jed, like the one that I mentioned to you, my managers, Bruno, Diogo, they really helped me just think about, whether this opportunity at BBH was worth taking and worth, exploring. And they were a huge help for me in making that decision. So I decided to take that opportunity, but I know that most of the residents are still there at Mal, just finishing those like month contract.
So heavy decision had to be made. Definitely. Those mentors, that's why we do what we do. That's why we have these connections. I got to do a better job following up with my past podcast guests. That reminds me. But so smart. And then they were able to help kind of guide you and make that decision, ending up at BBH. So it was really freelance for X amount of time, versus full-time at another great agency in New York. Makes sense to me. And what was like, and was it how, I mean, what really tipped the scale to go to BBH? Was it the full-time security,
Um,
learning like another great agency, New
yeah,
York?
I think a lot of those things played into it. The main thing was that they had just brought on a new president and a new CCO
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
earlier this year. The new CCO, his name is Rafa. He's amazing and very well known in the industry. My managers at Mal knew of him.
Okay, nice.
They were kind of able to tell me what type of person he is. He's an amazing person, and just has done a lot of great work. So, and they were a BBH right now is a small team. BBH New York, it's a small team. Believe it or not, it's a big name agency, but it's a small team.
Right. Okay.
So
That makes sense.
that for me was very attractive as a junior because I
Yeah.
knew I was going to be able to touch a lot of things. Whereas in an agency as big as Mal, let's say, where it's like 300 plus people,
Yep.
there's so many creative teams and there's so many great people that are put on amazing projects. So as a junior, you don't get as many of those bigger projects as
Sure.
you know. So
Naturally.
that was a huge.
Well,
Uh,
it actually makes sense that BBH New York is not the biggest. I mean, but in my head, I was just automatically thinking huge agency, also New York. So
yeah,
that's a great clarification point.
yeah, yeah,
And it makes sense.
definitely. Yeah, the New York office, they're kind of rebuilding and. It's a smaller team now, and they're growing. So we're growing. So in the new year, so it's definitely a lot of exciting things happening. I felt so. I wanted to kind of get in at this time.
Was it an open application like on LinkedIn for the BBH?
Yeah, it was. So
And
I did apply through LinkedIn actually.
so it was LinkedIn. Did you know anybody, or did people at Mall help you out to get there? What was like the X factor? It was just
Yeah, I think it's funny because the way I applied to Mal's residency program was so unconventional,
right.
but the way I applied to BBH was like very traditional. Like I saw the job
Well,
post on LinkedIn, and it was around the perfect timing of I was already starting to explore new opportunities as my residency was ending. So I applied on their website and I got an email from the recruiter a few weeks later. So it
Well,
was
it
very
kind of
fun.
makes it kind of makes sense. You have the mall on your resume now. You have the
Yeah.
mall experience. The traditional way for you is still like you're good to go. Like you got
Yeah.
a great path going.
Oh, for sure. And I give I'm so grateful to have been given that opportunity at Mal because I know that agency just opened having that agency on my
Yeah.
resume and being there opened a million doors that were not open before. So
Well,
yeah.
it's a great breaking and entering story, I think.
Definitely. Yeah, it's very unconventional and I'm glad to kind of share my story because I'm sure a lot of people are in the same place
Mhm.
as I was.
Yeah.
So
And it works out.
def-
It worked out phenomenal for you. So I'm gonna do the last couple. I'll have you do the final send off. Like, what's that? Like, what are some of those big pieces of advice that you have for students? Recap, or you could talk about resources you recommend people follow, or all. I'm gonna give you the mic now.
definitely. I think the biggest piece of advice that I would give is to to take advantage of the resources that you might have on your own campus, especially if you're a creative and you're not in a portfolio school and you're in a traditional university, there still might be a lot of great resources and professors at your school. So take advantage
Yep.
of that. I would also say that being a good and kind person matters so much more than any type of talent you could possibly have. And that is something that I've learned firsthand because if people want to work with you, that comes first and that is top of their mind before anybody that is crazy talented and they're just not a nice person. So I would say build those personal relationships with people, network with people, but also just be a human being and just say like happy holidays, how are you doing, because that stuff goes a long way. Just being kind, I think goes a long way. I know it's kind of a cheesy thing, but
No, I love it.
definitely something that I learned and is true. And then resources. So I would say We Are Next. I know that a lot of people say We Are Next on your podcast, but it's a great resource for anybody that's kind of entering
It really is.
And I didn't have it as I was graduating and as I was in school, or I didn't know of it. So I've kind of learned about We Are Next now later in my career. So definitely take advantage of that. Podcasts, like I said before, if you listen to people that are on certain podcasts, look them up on LinkedIn and talk to them and connect with them, because that goes a long way. If you're a creative, like ask for feedback on your portfolio. That's really cool. And then in terms of like portfolio building stuff that I wasn't in, but I know a lot of people who have done this, and it's been great. There are places like Ad House. I don't know if you've heard of Ad House, NYC, but that's a really great resource if you're trying to build your portfolio without having to, spend a lot of money on portfolio school. I think that might be.
What do? They review it and like.
So I think it's like a 10-week, and don't take my word for this because I haven't.
Workshop.
But,
boot camp.
I think it's like a 10-week program, and you meet like once a week, and it's like with a professor, and you create stuff. But it's relatively inexpensive, I know. So that might be useful for people that just don't want to pay for ad school, but want stuff for their portfolio.
I gotta get that guy. I know he's got a nice podcast too. I'm gonna try to get him on.
Yeah. He has Tom Chrisman, I think it's his name. Yeah, and he's on his podcast is the A-List, I believe. So
A-List. Yep. It's funny because a lot of the guests that he has, I have, and it's just always like he has Mo Osunbor. And I recorded that like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, well, I listened to him on. Oh, really? I'm excited to listen to him on.
He's hilarious.
He's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this was a great interview too. I appreciate it. So we'll send out those resources through our Instagram. Students, recent grads, I'm sure you're okay with them reaching out to you.
Of course.
If I can, is
LinkedIn. LinkedIn. Just search my name, Isabella Ciardelli, Ciardelli. Isabella with double L. And literally message me if anybody has any questions, any advice that I could possibly offer. I'm also starting out, but if I could give any advice to anybody that's in a similar situation as I was, I would love to. So please reach out. Yeah.
Great job. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this entire episode of the Breaking and Entering podcast. Once again, this was Isabella Ciardelli, phenomenal guest. Please head over to our Instagram @enteringad to find out more about her, follow her, and see her recommended resources. Thank you to Mikey Malarkey, our audio technician, Buchan Zhang, our creative director, and the student team, Midnight Oil Agency from the University of Illinois. Can't do it without you guys. We will see you next week with a very special guest.